call the meeting to order, please. Welcome, everybody. We stand for the pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing for the invocation. Get everybody. Okay. I will do a very short one, and that is, God is love. He that lives in love lives in God and God in him. Amen.
Amen.
Announcements, Josh?
It's actually for you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
Those
Anything
announcements.
that was
you
supposed
have.
to be? I didn't have anything right now. So, do we need to read the ethics statement? I mean, I see that it's on there.
Don't read it, it's just on there.
They read it out loud at the county commission meetings. I think it's
Okay.
a nice
If
reminder.
That's what the board wants me to do, I'll do that. Yep, sure. In accordance with the Code of Ethics adopted by the council, all council members have a duty to conduct the affairs of the governing body in an open and public manner, free of conflicts of interest. Is there any item on the agenda, the outcome of which will have a direct, substantial, or readily identifiable financial impact for any council member, his or her family, or close business associates? That's a question. Does any council member have a financial interest in any public contract coming before this council today? A question. So I don't hear any, so there being none, all board members have a duty and obligation to vote. And, Mr. Sneed, just so that we're clarified on this, when voting, because, you know, we were watching all the stuff up in Washington about.
They do it
Yeah. And when they vote present, then they're just present. But here, every member is required to vote.
If you fail to vote, it's deemed to be a vote in favor of the motion made.
So it goes, yeah, okay. All right, the first is a proclamation, Martin Luther King Day. Celebrating Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Whereas Dr. Martin Luther King inspired millions of Americans to participate in nonviolent protests to support the ideals of equality for all, and was a motivating force behind all civil rights movement that had as its goal the creation of a society tolerant of all races, cultures, and nationalities. And whereas the ideals of Dr. King and of Black Mountain's commitment to human rights are worthy of reflection and serve as a reminder that improving the quality of life for all members of our community is a responsibility of every citizen. And whereas the celebration of Dr. King's birthday is intended as a time for all Americans to reaffirm their commitment to the basic principles that underlie our Constitution, equality and justice for all. And whereas the town of Black Mountain encourages all citizens to rededicate themselves to the principles of respect for human rights and freedom, and of belief in nonviolence, and of commitment to improving our community through community service and volunteerism. Now, therefore, I see Michael Sobel, Mayor of the town of Black Mountain, do proclaim January the 16th, 2023 as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day in the town of Black Mountain. The town of Black Mountain will honor Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. at the annual Shenandoah Valley Prayer Breakfast hosted by the local Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial Corporation. Each year, scholarships are awarded to local recipients who have applied and made it through the selection process. The challenge that the scholarship poses include critical thinking and compassionate actions, proclaimed this 5th day of January 2023. All right, next we have a life-saving award. Chief of Police Steve Parker.
How are y'all this afternoon? So I'll try to speak into the mic, but I want to make sure that I get everybody up. Come on up here. So on 10/24/20 2022 Sergeant Monty Hensley and Officer Alexander Cruz were dispatched to an undisclosed location in regard to an overdosed female unconscious and unresponsive. Sergeant Hensley arrived first and immediately addressed the situation. Realizing immediately the female had overdosed, he administered a dose of Narcan immediately. The female remained unresponsive and appeared to have no life. Officer Cruz, who's been a police officer for just 1 year, without regard to himself, fentanyl can hurt people who are in the location, immediately began CPR. He administered chest compressions for nearly 5 minutes. If anybody knows about CPR, 5 minutes is a lifetime. As he was doing the chest compressions for the 5 minutes, he never wavered. He was exhausted while doing it, but continued, and the female victim continued to appear not to have life. Around the 4 minutes and 30 seconds, the female victim showed little signs of life. He continued to do his chest compressions. She regained consciousness. She became slowly alert, and again, she refused medical treatment. But I wanted to mention, and I've made mention to this in the past, that this is not something that they're trained to do all the time. They've learned how to do CPR, but it's important that, you know, when EMS and fire doesn't get there, that they have the skills to do this when necessary. They were able to end up, there was somebody that same weekend that had perished from an overdose from fentanyl, and so it was something that was fresh in their minds that here they had another victim that they were dealing with. It was amazing how these officers jumped right into action with no regard to themselves, the hazardous fentanyl contamination, and render aid needed. The female didn't thank the officers, but it's my job, town council, and the citizens to make sure to thank these officers for what they did and how they did it, and for that we're giving them a life-saving award, and congratulations, guys. You did an amazing job. Picture of them standing right here, is that okay?
Fine. Yep, move right ahead. Right there. Good job.
She wants us to stay.
There you go, yep.
Good job, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Before you leave, Mr. Parker, I would like to say that last Tuesday, there was a shooting, drive-by shooting on Rhododendron Avenue. And fortunately, somehow, we, meaning the Black Mountain Police, were able to track down the vehicle. And on Wednesday, with the aid of the SWAT team, because this was, the gentleman that they found was out in the county, so it was a combination effort. And so within 48 hours, they had the suspect arrested. Good job.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
All right. We have a well head protection award presentation by the North Carolina Rural Water Association. Debbie Maynard, excuse me.
Maynard.
Maynard.
Maynard. And I had to follow the police chief the last time I was here, so
Yeah, yeah.
it's not easy. And I don't know if you, I guess I need to talk into the microphone. I don't know how many of you were here before when I did a whole presentation about the wellhead protection plan, and Jamie Matthews being a big part of that and involved. And I'm presenting an award tonight to Jamie and the town of Black Mountain for having successfully not only completed this update of their plan most recently, but Black Mountain was the first community in the state that developed a wellhead protection plan and got it approved by the state. They've updated it once before now, and we just updated again. It was approved on April 12th, 2022. Did you hear me say 19? So I don't know, do you want me to?
That's fine.
Just present it to Jamie.
To Jamie?
Yeah, I don't know how you want to stand.
I want you on this side of me and let Jordan take a picture and
Okay.
we'll put this in our magazine. And can we see you in the background, or do you want us to, do you want
That's
to?
all right. Okay, this is the gentleman that deserves the credit for it, not us.
Jamie did a great job.
For a lot of new council members and stuff, a lot of people don't know what North Carolina Rural Water is, but it's a free service to municipalities, and they've been a tremendous asset for the town of Black Mountain as far as free service for leak detection. They help with our consumer confidence reports. It's just, the list can go on and on and on. So between you and Keith and everybody involved, I just want to say thank you because you've been a tremendous help for me.
Well, we're glad to be here. You guys have a lot of pressure on you. We know how hard it is to provide clean, quality drinking water.
And I'd also like to say that, you know, this come about before my time. So there's a lot of other people to thank for this. But our water system was a lot different then compared to now. So our whole report and everything is totally different. So hopefully we can keep updating it every 5 years, and it'll change as time goes on, and somebody else can take the torch and run with it. So very thankful. Thank you very much.
Very good. Very good. Also, it may come up later, but Jamie and his whole department deserve credit for everyone having a very Merry Christmas with water. So, thank you. We knew we had a couple problems, but most people have water. Thanks. All right, next. Oh, I've got here on the Glass Center presentation.
Citizen comments.
Huh?
Citizen comments.
Okay. Citizen comment. You have got 4 people signed up. First, Rick Early.
Hey folks, I'm Rick Early. I live at 107 Oakland Drive here in Black Mountain. Speaking of water, I've got 3 questions that I would think it would be appropriate for council and staff to address sometime soon. The first question is, what percentage of the Black Mountain water we use is purchased from Asheville? Second question, what executed agreements do we have with the city of Asheville to provide a way for them to not limit the water that we want to purchase? And third, is there any plan to drill a couple of new wellheads going forward so we can reduce our dependence on Asheville for drinking water going forward? Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. We will be getting back to you, someone will, with these answers. Next, Frank Capella. There he is. We have police officers here, so it's not necessary to bring a bodyguard.
I have to, especially these two. I've got another friend back there who's gonna come out. So Hightown Council, hope you're all doing well. Welcome Alice, welcome back Mayor. We're happy to see you here. Again, my name's Frank Capelli. I'm really excited to be here on behalf of Babe Ruth here in Owen to announce that we're going to be donating through one of our sponsors the re-leveling and setting of fields 1 and 2, which constantly gets flooded over at Veterans Park. So we're really excited about that. So that means that we can play on fields 1 and 2. It's going to be drained a lot better whenever floods do happen, and they're going to be fixed up for the start of this season. That means the town doesn't need to spend about $4,000, which the cost would be to fix fields in this way. Over the past few months, we've heard a good deal about how Babe Ruth, we got to do better. We know that we've got to do better. Well, we just came to the plate. So our organization, we're donating to the town about $4,000 worth of services to make the town's fields better. Now tonight, I'm here to talk to you about fencing. So I want to introduce you to two of my friends, Jaden and Daniel Allison here. These two brothers are two of the best players that we have in the leagues that they play in for Owen Babe Ruth. I got the honor to work with these two because my two sons were on both of their teams this past year. Can you guys just say hi? What's your favorite position in baseball? Jaden?
Pitcher.
Daniel? And they're pretty good. They're really good. Over the past couple of years, leagues around us here in Owen have started to tell us that they won't come out to Black Mountain because our fields are in such poor shape. So really last fall, we were only playing at Veterans Park when we played other teams from Black Mountain. When we played any Asheville team, we had to travel to them. So a lot of times, and for me especially, we had two kids in the league. I was going to be in Black Mountain. My wife's going to be in Asheville watching the other kid, which brings me to Daniel here. So this past year was the first year that Daniel ever played baseball. You wouldn't believe it if you saw him. He's a natural. All right, this past fall, we were over at Ray Kasai Field. He hit a ball so hard, and it just kept going, kept drifting, and it went over the fields over at Ray Kasai. I didn't see anyone in that league hit a home run over the fences. Daniel's parents didn't see that. They were at a different field, watching their other kid here in Black Mountain, because we can't have both of those teams playing at the same field. 2 weeks later, the same thing happened. Daniel hit another home run in Asheville. Both his parents weren't there. Actually, neither of them saw it that time. That makes me very sad as a parent of four. Being able to see that is something special. When that second one hit, it was like Aaron Judge was hitting the home run record. It was incredible. There used to be permanent fencing at all four fields at Veterans Park. There's only fencing at one of them right now. Now, Field 3 has permanent fencing not long ago.
Hurry up, Drab.
Okay,
Get it up.
one more second. I'm just asking, we put up permanent fencing back at Field 3. Fields 1 and 2, we get it, they flood, that fencing's gonna get away. But permanent fencing, please put it back at Field 3.
Thank
Okay,
you.
I'm out.
Appreciate that.
Thank you, guys.
Tyler Atkins, was that? There it is. And if you would keep in mind, it's a 3-minute limit.
Thank you. Tyler Atkins, 807 Laurel Avenue. Well, I happen to be the coach of Daniel, first-year player who hit the 2 home runs, so I just want to throw that out there. But I'm also an advocate for youth sports in Black Mountain. Both my children, Nolan and Jonah Atkins, play multiple youth sports. We're currently in the indoor soccer league. I'm a coach there. I'm also a board member for the Babe Ruth organization. Babe Ruth organization is really trying to help this town out a lot now. We have a lot of new faces in our group, a lot of new momentum going forward. We're looking to bring some things to town that are very exciting. We just want to continue to offer up the incentive to town to help us out so that we can help you by bringing in different things to our town like tournaments. That's all I have for you guys tonight, but always, as I like to say, I'm an advocate of youth sports. My wife is an educator here in town. She's the local art teacher at the elementary and primary school. We're highly involved with the children of the community, and we want to keep them a focus in the town council and budgetary procedures. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Next, or last then, is Clint Creasman.
All right, guys, my name's Clint Creasman. I am the current and baseball commissioner for Owen Babe Ruth. I'm here to announce tonight that we have been selected to host the 2023 8U State Championship Tournament. So in June, this tournament will take place between June 22nd and June 27th. There'll be 16 teams coming here from all over the state. This will be a good opportunity for our town to represent itself. You're going to have Lots of people stay in your hotels, restaurants. They're going to be shopping in your stores, gas stations. And we want to represent our town the best way we can. So just like Frank and Tyler have asked you guys, we need some help. Our facilities are quite inadequate. Dugouts are falling in. A couple of the benches are like 3-4 inches off the ground. We need some new fencing around the dugouts. Let's see. We've done a little bit of basic math on this. You're going to be approximately 1,000 to 1,500 people here over those few days. We'd also like to have the PA systems replaced to announce some names, do national anthems, stuff a lot of ballparks do. We don't have those things right now. I guess that's about it. Yeah, that's about it. Thank you guys for your time.
We hear you. Thank you. Okay, now we get to the glass presentation. Janice, yes.
Hi, my name is Janice Goldthorpe. I'm the Executive Director of the North Carolina Glass Center. We have one facility right now in Asheville, and we're looking forward to bringing the same sort of experience here to Black Mountain. I have a short presentation that I'd like to go through and tell you a little bit about what we do. Basically, this is an introduction to the magic of glass making, and if you've never seen glass being made, it is a magical experience, and we're hoping to bring that experience to visitors and townsfolk here alike in Black Mountain. These are some examples of people working in the glass studio. This is in the hot glass shop, and glass is kind of like molten taffy. On the right there, you see glass coming off of a gather, and that glass is about 2,000 degrees. The project that we're talking about now is to create a new glass center here in Black Mountain. It would be operational in early 2024. Our organization has been around since 2015. We have lots and lots of visitors and artists who utilize our facilities right now. Over 47,000 people visited our facility in Asheville last year. That was about comparable to the previous year as well. We have a good solid staff, myself included. I came down here to North Carolina from Rochester, New York, where I ran an art center for 15 years. And before that, had a long career in corporate America. This project is shovel ready. We're going to be renting our space from our facility, our landlord, who has purchased a number of properties here in Black Mountain and has some great expectations for what's going to happen for the arts in the community. Again, people working in glass, we have lots of students who visit our facility. By students, I mean usually people in high school and college-age students. We also have a number of adults who come and take advantage of our glass blowing experience. It is a very unique experience. It's not something that is generally available in many markets. Nationally, it's kind of a rarity to have a glass blowing studio in your community, so we're really excited to be able to bring that here to Black Mountain. Our facility is very much a part of the Asheville community at the moment, and we work very closely with the Explore Asheville organization to promote and extend the word about glass blowing here in the area. We're assuming that we're going to be doing that as well for the facility here in Black Mountain. Here's a couple of college students who've come into our facility to do a workshop. So basically the impact that we hope to have is to have some opportunities for hands-on educational experiences in glass blowing. And I talk about glass blowing, it's more extensive than just glass blowing. We also have a flame working studio, which is working with glass over a torch. We'll also be doing glass fusing and other glass activities like casting. So this project will be an opportunity for people to come in and see things being made, make things themselves, purchase products that have been made by local and regional glass artists. And we're hopeful that this is going to be kind of a hub and an anchor for the location, which is at 112 East State Street in Black Mountain. So on the left, you see somebody shaping glass. That's about as close as you get to touching glass with your hands. That's a wad of newspaper, wet wad of newspaper, and that glass is red because it's about 1,000 degrees. Then on the right, you see a student who's using a torch to form glass. Different process. You don't start with molten glass there. You start with solid glass, and it melts as you go. Lots of fire. I was chatting with our fire people back there. We love fire. We're always working with fire. So opportunities at the Glass Center now, we do a number of outreach activities. On the right, you see one of our veterans in our veterans program. That's David, who is wearing the This Is My Glass Blowing shirt. He's totally into glass blowing now. And so we have programs for veterans. We have programs for emerging artists. Emily Powell is a person who came to us and got her start in glass blowing, and now she's a full-time glass blower. We also have opportunities for people from the community to come in on community days. Opportunities for students. This is the Journeyman Group. These are middle and high school youth who are in a I'll say a mentorship program for youth in the city of Asheville. We had a group come in from Asheville High School. We did a presentation on the chemistry behind glass blowing, so there's a lot of science behind this activity, and we can provide that experience to people. On the right, we also do a program, and this was one of the programs that we've done with Open Doors of Asheville. So we have a lot of opportunities for youth to participate. We have a mobile glass blowing unit that we can take out into the community, and we do. This is an experience that we had for a group of, a convention group basically, out at the Grove Park Inn. We have a beautiful array of glass objects, and we anticipate having a fabulous gallery in the space in Black Mountain as well. And we support the work of over 50 artists in our studio in Asheville. That is a significant portion of income for probably 10 of those artists. So this is a way that we can help sustain arts and creative sector in our communities. Lots of stuff going out the door. We pack and ship. We sell nationally, as well as allow people to ship objects when they can't take it with them as they leave. Every year we have a fabulous pumpkin patch in the fall where we have glass pumpkins. It seems to be kind of a thrill for people. I'm not sure that I really get it entirely, but people come and they can purchase glass pumpkins. People come and purchase maybe one or a dozen or add to their collection as they go. And you'll always see people watching. We have an inside viewing space as well as an outside viewing space, and people are always watching the artists at work or watching the students in their classes. As I mentioned, we had 47,000 people come to the center this last year. This is a rendering of what the studios and gallery will look like in Black Mountain. You might recognize the outside of that building. And it is being heavily renovated and expanded, both vertically as well as horizontally out the back. This is an idea of what the interior space will look like. In the front will be the gallery, in the back will be the hot shop. Off to the right, you don't see it here, but that will be the flame shop and other casting and fusing areas. And I thank you very much for letting me come and tell you a little bit more about the Glass Center. We're super excited about coming, and we've engaged with a number of the arts number of people in the arts community here, and I think people are really anticipating a lot of great things from us being here in 2024.
Thank you, Janice. Does anyone on the board wish to ask any questions? Thank you. I have, I just have one. I know that when you were showing the rendering of the outside of the building, those of us that are a little bit older remember that building as being the rug and jug shop.
Right.
And there were some glass rings out front. And I saw you had some glass rings, but they're not, doesn't look to be the same.
I'm not sure,
variety of color.
yeah, I'm not sure that that'll be the same things. They're ceramic, the ones that were here from the ceramic pots. And we have saved them. We're not sure how we're going to incorporate that into the design, but we hope that we can have some homage to that rug and jug space as well.
And I just want to share that there's a lot of people that hope that you
Yeah.
make that. 'Cause
Yep.
that was-
We are, I know that the building owners are saving a lot of the historic facade, all the stonework on the inside. There's a fireplace on the inside. It's a very cool space. But of course, to be functional for a working glass studio, we definitely have to make some modifications to what is on the inside. But we hope to keep kind of the character as much as we can.
Well, good.
Thank you.
Very much. We
Yeah.
look forward to it.
Thank you.
All right, consent agenda.
All right, Mayor and Council, the consent agenda tonight consists of 4 items, those being 5A, adoption of minutes from our December meetings. Item 5B, a resolution designating the official bank depository and authorizing signers of checks. 5C is a resolution in support of the Friends of the Fauna Flora State Trail application for NCDOT paved trails and sidewalk feasibility study grant. That's a mouthful. And then 5D, grant project fund ordinance for disaster relief from Tropical Storm Fred. That'll be your consent agenda.
Okay. Do I hear a motion to go ahead and accept the consent agenda?
So moved.
Okay. Discussion of any of the items. I would like to make one comment on B, that is where we are going ahead in the bank depository with Truist Bank, used to be SunTrust. We discussed it at the agenda meeting, and I certainly would hope that maybe that you will be moving towards getting an RFP, towards trying to maybe get that depository at one of the 3 local banks. And my reasoning on that is, number one, is the fact that Truist left us. So I don't have any allegiance to Truist.
We should have a meeting set up, Mr. Mayor, with a bank in a couple weeks.
Excellent. Because that's an hour, it takes at least an hour to go to Otine and back. That's 5 hours a week. So that sounds good. Glad to hear that then. Anything on the Fonta Flora? Do we ever get a map on that as to what that's gonna look like?
We did email that out to everybody today, earlier. Can you find it and pull it up on the screen if you don't mind, please?
If we couldn't get that, if we could at least get a description of what we're speaking about.
So essentially, from my understanding from Amanda with Fauna Flora, Friends of the Fauna Flora State Trail, this would be coming from Point Lookout into Black Mountain, a little farther than our town limits, and then of course we are on the other side. Of
The
Pont
north
Lookout.
side of the interstate.
That's correct. I lost my train of thought. We have applied for funding through the MPO for a feasibility study to look at another section coming through town as well. So these would be connecting pieces, if you will.
Okay, so we got 2 that
This is their part.
This is their part, which would be partly in the county because we can't fund that.
Which is coming to the city limits
That's correct.
of Black Mountain.
That's right.
Okay, and there's, right now, from what I understand, talking to Amanda, that's gonna be on the south side.
And I think that's up for, at this point, I think it's just kind of a corridor and they're trying to see what looks best.
Okay, that's all I got. You don't have to call that out. And then D, on the fund for the disaster relief. could you get a copy of that, the engineer design of whatever it was for the bridge that this would cover at the golf course?
Yeah.
Because the Greenway Commission is going to need a bridge down below to get across, and we can utilize the same thing.
Happy to get you something.
Yeah, all right, very good. That's all the stuff I had, if anybody else got anything. Otherwise, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 5-0. All right. Unfinished business. The Green Tea Grill lease.
There's a map.
Just in
Well, I think the public would like to see this. This is a project that's originating in Morganton. You can see on the right side of the map there, and will snake around Lake James, and then get down into Marion and snake around. Then it starts coming up the old US 70. Well, excuse me, we got to get to Old Fort first, right? And then we would get to, then that's coming up the Old Fort Mountain. Bound on the old, not the 6-lane road, but that'll be the old part, which at least, 6 miles of that is already in a trail, is in the trail system.
That sounds close.
So then what we need to do then is get to Black Mountain. And later on in the presentation, hopefully, what we can do is stay on that south side of the interstate and be able to utilize this 26 acres that was given to the town to put a spur through there till we could end up at the back of Bilo's. So, anyway, thank you, Angela. Okay, very good.
Green Tea Grill lease. That's where we are. I think you already called that.
I call it the 19th hole, but the Green Tea Grill was leased a couple of years ago. Actually, we ended up with a problem that gave our first lease a year and a portion. But our current lease extends to the end of this month. I was asked last month to put together the lease for the next couple of years on the assumption she was exercising her option to renew. I don't know if the timing on that was perfect for exercising the option, but we do know she wants to renew. I provided the board with a lease, same terms as the prior term, and there were a couple of questions. I know at our last meeting it was brought up whether or not the $400 a month rent is sufficient. It was my understanding it was never really designed to be efficient. To make money, it was to keep something open on the golf course, to add to the attraction of the golf course. That's the reason the rent was so low. We needed to attract somebody and keep it going. I've just been handed a sheet of paper. There was a question about how much the electric bill runs for the building. And that varied anywhere, and just looking at this for the last 2 years. Okay, he's got an average, and that's an annual average of $8,303 for the electricity for the building, which the town has paid the full amount of. Where that affects you, and I passed out a copy of the proposed lease. I won't call it the proposed, the beginning point for a lease. Last meeting where I highlighted 2 things, but one of them is item 4. If you don't have a highlighted version, item 4 shows just left the rent at $400 a month. I think that's up for discussion by this board. If you jump up a couple paragraphs to paragraph 2, this was the option to renew we had in the last lease that carried forward. And there is no obligation, even if she'd exercised her option, to continue that option for an additional lease term. That's up to this board and obviously in discussion with the owner. I highlighted on the second page just an issue. The tenant maintains everything. If it breaks and can be fixed, she fixes it. If it breaks and you gotta throw it away, it's on us because that's our equipment that she's using. That's identifying the things that are owned by the town. But I don't know what to add to that conversation. I haven't been involved in the negotiations. I think Josh knows more about that. But these are the terms of the lease that are going to talk about. See if we can work something out with the lady for another year.
Any Anybody got any questions? I will have to say that I've been very pleased with the way that that the Green Tea Grill has drawn interest from other folks who just want to go there and eat. So it makes it not very profitable, but it makes it a little bit easier to make it by. So congratulations on that, I think, and I look forward to the word getting out more and more. Do I hear a motion to approve the lease?
So moved.
All in favor? Excuse me, any discussion? Hearing none.
And I'm assuming that the board is agreeing not only to give her the lease at the same monthly rental, but to put in the option for her to renew again last year for on the same conditions? Or do you want to modify that in some way?
So you want to renew it for last year, for
No,
next year?
For next year. When her time's up next year, we leave it in that term. If you agree tonight to let her lease for another year, $400 a month. The way it's written, it says when a year's up, she gives notice in time, she can renew for another year at $400 a month. I just want to make sure that's what you're approving.
I would say we can look at it again next year, so let's reword it that way, where we can take another look at it next year.
Okay, so we
approve
just
it for this
remove the item 2.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and thank you for bringing the information about the energy bill. I think gives better context for what we're looking at.
Josh, have we had to replace much equipment in the past?
We've had a few things we've had to deal with, really just getting worn out over the years with different people being in there as tenants, but it's not been anything that's been that substantial. But there has been a handful of things, some flooring we had to do, and some cooler work and things like that, but nothing that's out of the ordinary.
So everyone here then, everyone is in agreement on this except removing item 2. So that the renewal she would need to come back next year to renew.
If I may bring this up, you're leasing a piece of property, which is typically the town puts it out there for bid, the same as you're gonna do with banks and my job, and take bids and consider it. Do we want to at least put in here that she has the right to renew, with just the terms of at least payments being negotiable?
I think that's reasonable.
I think that's reasonable. That's what I was saying.
Okay.
Yes.
You're saying kind of a first option.
Right.
Coming to her first, but yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll word your paragraph to that effect.
So should we review the final lease before voting on it, or the final language, or are you comfortable with?
Her term's up at the end of the month.
Oh, yeah.
You may have to trust me a little bit, but I think probably it's for her to know she can continue business if you approve the lease with the provision that she'll have the option to renew if she and the board can come to terms on the amount of rent for the next year.
Great.
One more question, Josh. When we look at the budget and numbers for the golf course, are we taking into account electric cost? And we were basically subsidizing every month's electric bill except for one with that $400. So I'm wondering, in some cases it was $1,500 a month just for the electric bill. So I'm wondering if we are accounting for that in the budget, or where does that go?
Yeah, I mean, it's an expense line.
For the golf course, or for?
Yeah, for the for the electricity at the golf course.
Okay.
That's how that works. So whatever you're getting in revenue kind of offsets some of that cost, if you will.
Any other comments? Discussion?
You want to amend the motion slightly before you vote on it?
I would like to make that motion with the amended as presented.
I think the minutes will pick the pieces up. So.
Exactly.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it, 5-0. Okay. We go for the draft RFP.
Sure, so, Mayor and Council, you should have the draft RFP in your packet. Hopefully you've had time to kind of look over that some. And, this was kind of borrowed from a lot of different places and seeing, whenever they do this same sort of, request for proposals for legal services. So what you've got here really is just a kind of a breakdown of what we're looking for, the information we've been wanting on an RFP, and then how we, of course, select those, ultimately select the firm that we would use for our attorney services. I know that I met with Council Member Berry. She had a question specifically about one of these sentences about providing legal prosecution and defense for and against the town and for and against the town officials. That is the language that this should be in there, so that's
Okay.
correct language.
Thank you for
You
checking.
confirm that with.
Okay, yeah. We have to translate legal speak sometimes.
That is a peculiar line.
This is scope of services C.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But obviously, in any lawsuit against the town, that would be the front line on defending the town. If there's a lawsuit against an employee in the performance of their duty, this board can decide whether or not to have me handle that.
I see.
If it's a battle between the town and the employee, or the town and a member of this board, the town is my client.
That makes sense. Thanks. Yeah.
We've also put in here, we would anticipate, if y'all are okay with this, going ahead and getting this posted for responses, and then the award would be, we would have that on, excuse me, the March 13th meeting for a vote. Now, of course, if there are some issues or y'all want to see some things change, we may have to push that a little bit. But wanted y'all to be okay with it before we move forward with posting.
So those will be opened up during the agenda meeting.
Yeah, however y'all want to do that, we sure can.
I mean, because you said 5 o'clock, and if we gavel the meeting at 5.
Right.
Well, you gaveled at 6.
No, the agenda.
Oh, excuse me.
The decision probably should be made in the regular meeting.
Yeah. So we just need to put that on as an agenda item.
That's right.
And then just open them up while we're in session.
I believe I can forward that in the packs to the council for you to read over, because I'm assuming they're gonna be pretty long.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you can, I'll put it on for the agenda.
When you have an RFP this long, your application is likely to be 5 to 10 pages.
Yeah, this says received by March 9th, Thursday, March 9th, before the agenda. So we'll get it.
So it is the week before.
Council will get it and have a chance to review it, I'm assuming.
Could you clarify the role of a firm versus a specific lawyer? I know in the past, Attorney Sneed has, you've kind of utilized your partner to help out in some cases when you were, you had to recuse yourself or something like that, and so.
Well, if I recuse myself and I can't fill in my place, my firm is disqualified. And in the past, we've used William Morgan when I've recused myself. And recently, with Susan available, a couple times I've recused myself. You've asked Susan Russo Klein to come in and fill that gap.
Okay.
But yeah, if I'm disqualified, everybody in the firm is disqualified.
Oh, okay, okay.
I will throw in a piece just to scare you. There's a preference of town councils. I think the last time I was actually appointed, the firm was appointed. The reason being, there's some cases from several years ago where contract attorneys like me, the courts decided you should have been doing withholding on me and paying into my pension plan. And that's when most towns started appointing the firm rather than the individual.
All right. Any more discussion? Any more questions? Mr. Sneed? If not, do I hear a motion?
So moved.
All in favor? Oh, discussion, any more discussion? Not? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Unanimous. Now bring us up with the personnel position classification of pay plan.
All right, so I have Mr. David Hill with us this evening, Piedmont Triad Regional Council. He has done more of these pay studies than I'd like to say how many he's done, but this is something that was one of the top priorities of the last council in our retreat in March of 2022 was to perform a pay study and analysis. So we got to work on that, started actually doing this work in August, and we were hopeful we could do this in December. I think we were ready, but David had some conflicts. So here we are in January, but I will, for the moment, turn it over to David and let him go through the PowerPoint, and then I'm sure there'll be questions.
Thank you, Josh. My apologies to begin with. My allergies are taking their toll on me. My eyes are weeping, and I think I'm losing my voice, but we'll go as far as we can. I am David Hill, management analyst with Piedmont Regional Triad Council of Government. That's the council of government that serves the Greensboro, Winston-Salem area and the 73 local governments. Obviously, we work all over the state. I'm native to Haywood County, Waynesville. Spent the last 23 years working for Caldwell County government and have been working on pay and class studies since my retirement. I actually did my very first prevailing wage survey in 1974. I don't recall how long ago that was. I think each of you have had an opportunity to review the PowerPoint, but my approach to the PowerPoint is we will take a look at what the workforce looked like at the very beginning of the study. So that'll be that first grouping of charts that we'll take a look at. Then we'll take a look at just a sampling of some of the market comparisons. I won't sit here tonight and go through each one of those, but we'll take a representative look at that. Josh will have the sheet, the spreadsheet that has those comparisons for each one of your positions. So we're going to look at 3 tonight, but every one of your positions has a worksheet that has the market comparisons, and Josh will have that. But then we'll take a look at the some findings and some recommendations, and I hope I'm hitting the right buttons here. So to begin with, we of course had the discussion about who should be in the market, who should be those local governments that we compare to. So on this slide, you can see those local governments. Obviously, those all are very local governments. The very first thing I take a look at when I do a study is a Google map. I locate where I will be working, and then I take a look at anywhere from a 45 to an hour's drive difference, because those will be your immediate competitors. Just speaking from experience, greater than 90% of your employees will not move to another part of the state of North Carolina to go to work for another local government. Obviously, managers and some department directors will, but the majority of your employees will not. However, will they leave their driveway tomorrow morning and drive left instead of right and go to another local government? Obviously, they will. So that's why you see that list up there. Those are the local governments that most of your employees could, without moving or making any other personal accommodations, go to work for any one of those other local governments. And then obviously that gives us a wide range. Obviously, how does Asheville compare to Black Mountain? How does Woodfin compare to Black Mountain? So all of that becomes part of that analysis of the data that I collect. But at the beginning, in this room, I held kickoff meetings with all the employees. I discussed with the employees the study, the process, the procedure, what I would be needing from employees. Down at the bottom of this screen, you'll see that employees completed for me a 12-page questionnaire. That's 12 pages of each employee telling me everything about their job and everything that they do, to include all of the ADA elements of their position, as well as the physical demands and working conditions, educational certifications, everything that was necessary for the performance of their job. I met individually with department directors, reviewed organizational charts. All of this was just part of me beginning that collection of data from as many places as I could, as many sources as I could, to find out as much as I could about each of the positions that make up Black Mountain local government. And then obviously I began collecting information from each of those local governments. I began that preliminary analysis and comparisons. I get to the point where I've developed some preliminary findings, preliminary recommendations. Come and meet with Josh, and we talk through those, look through those. Then we start getting into some areas of internal equity, because you're working with two different spheres here. You're talking about comparing positions with the local market, each of those local governments. But then I have to be very careful, because some of your positions have very good comparisons. Police officer, for example, every one of those local governments has a police officer. But then you do have some positions within your local government that some of those local governments do not have. So I have to be careful with those comparisons. And then you get into some internal equity and making some judgment calls. So this whole process is not a scientific process. There's obviously some objective elements of it, but there's quite a bit of subjective elements also. So just began and continue that comparison, that analysis, and just working from a broad view and getting narrower in that look at each of those presentations. And all of that gets us to me sitting here in front of you this evening. So what we'll take a look at right now is what the workforce looked like at the very beginning of the study. Now, before I do that, I will give you my view of a workforce, my view of the world. If the sample size is large enough, whatever that data is that you might be measuring in a mature workforce should resemble that bell curve that we're all familiar with, standard deviation. And if you have a mature workforce, and my definition of a mature workforce is that you have an average years of employment between 8 and 10 years. So if you had a mature workforce, and again, if the sample size was large enough, you should be able to find about 2/3 of your employees in the middle 1/3 of that bell curve. That bell curve also represents a pay grade range, with the far left being the minimum or starting salary, the middle section being the midpoint or the market value, and the far right side would be the maximum of that range. So going to the next slides, I now will apologize again, because I have a technical inability to recreate a bell curve. So you will notice that my bell curves, the very few that I use, look like St. Louis arches. So in my first St. Louis arch chart, we're going to take a look at the average years of employment at the beginning of the study. And as I said, my definition of a mature workforce is average years of employment between 8 and 10. So you've got an average years of employment of 6.7 years. Now that arch represents a 20-year career. So you can see on the far right side, you do have some employees who've been with you a relatively long period of time. However, looking at that far left side of that screen, you can see that you have a relatively large number of new employees. And if you look at that information in the bottom left, you can see that you've got about getting close to 1/4 of your employees who've been with you less than 2 years. And then you've got over 60% of your employees who've been with you less than 5 years. So when I look at that, I can tell you that should draw some interest. And what you're seeing in those bars is at the beginning of the study, those employees who came to work for you in each of those calendar years who are still here What's not shown on that bar graph are the number of employees who came to work in each of those calendar years who are no longer with you. And I can tell you just historically, if you look at those high bars on the left side, that if you begin to look at future years, those high bars will begin looking like some of those low bars. And that's history, that's natural. I don't know a local government in the state of North Carolina who retains every employee that they bring to work. So I can tell you also that in all the presentations that I do, this chart in every local government looks just like yours. So even though you're showing a considerably large number of new employees, your chart is not any different than any other local government in the state of North Carolina. We all wish they would all look much better, but that's what they all look like. This is your pay grade range. That St. Louis Arch represents the full range from minimum to maximum. The black bar in the center is the midpoint of each of your salary grades. You can see that you have probably 2 employees who have salaries that are above the midpoint. And when I say midpoint, I'm talking about what typically in salary administration is the market value of a position. The left side of a pay grade range is where a brand new employee would come in, a trainee, somebody that with experience would advance across the grade range. That black bar in the center represents where somebody who's been in the position 8 to 10 years. That's about where their salary should be. So you can see, and again, this chart is reflective of the one we looked at earlier. You've got a relatively young workforce, a lot of relatively new employees, so you would expect to see their salaries on that far left side. So what you're seeing is you do have a couple of employees whose salaries are below minimum, but most of your employees are in that 2 but less than 4%. And Josh, I can't recall now that the progression of new employees coming to work, where they would come to work at the minimum and receive a probationary increase after that. I don't know if that's where that large number of employees came from. But this chart is representative of the one we looked at before. I would expect to see some large bars on the left side because you have a relatively young workforce. But you can see down in the bottom left, and I'm not too particularly concerned with salary compression, even though you do have salary compression. But the salary compression is mostly a product of the relatively new workforce that you have. Your employees have not been with you long enough to advance across the range. So you've got some automatic, natural salary compression, combination of relatively new employees, just they haven't been here long enough to begin advancing. But in the bottom left, you can see that you're getting close to half of your employees being compressed, their salaries being compressed, less than 5% above the minimum of their grade range. So that's an area that needs to be addressed, but probably sometime in the future. Because again, this chart is representative and is practically a mirror of the one we looked at before. So we'll take a look at some market comparative examples. I will tell you in using these what I look for. And again, each one of your positions has a worksheet that looks just like this. So on the far left, you have the names of each of those local governments that I collected data from. And then the column that's titled MIN, that's the minimum salary for each of the positions, the midpoint, and then the maximum salary. That's the salary grade range that each of these local governments have for this particular classification. And what we're looking at is firefighter 2. And then the column titled actual, that's the actual average salary at the time this data was submitted to me for each of the positions in each of those local governments that compare to firefighter 2. Now, obviously, not a lot, several of these local governments don't have fire departments. Lake Lure is an example of they have that comparative classification, but they don't have any employees currently in that position. Comparatio, that column that's titled CR, and I won't get into a lot of details tonight unless you want to ask me a lot of questions about that. The comparatio is a measurement I use. Comparatio is the measurement of where an employee's salary is in relation to that midpoint. And again, that midpoint being the market value. So if my salary is at midpoint, I should have a comparatio of 1.00. So anything less than 1.00 means that employee's salary or those average salaries are below the midpoint. Weaverville, you can see, has a comparatio of 1.04. I worked with Weaverville last year to make some pretty aggressive changes in some of their classifications, so you can see that currently the average salary for their comparative position is above the midpoint. All the rest are below. Now, the information below the blue line. Immediately below the blue line, Black Mountain, to the right of that is the number 10. That's the pay grade assignment for this particular position. And then you see the pay grade range for grade 10, a minimum of $40,607, a midpoint of $50,746, a max of $60,885. And at the beginning of the study, the data that I collected, that Josh provided to me, the average salary for your employees in this particular classification was $44,719. Now, if you look at the shaded column at the top of the chart, 3%. The data that I collected from each of these local governments was collected in August and September. So the pay grade ranges still are the same. If I collected actual salaries from each of these places, they would be a little different, but not significantly enough to affect these comparisons. The shaded 3% column is where or what would this data look like at the beginning of the next fiscal year. So that 3% is a very conservative projection of where that minimum salary. So right now, the average minimum salary is $42,206, which is 3.9% above your current minimum for this position. The minimum is the midpoint, the median, the median is $40,887, which is 0.7% above your current minimum. So then I take a look at what will that data look like at the beginning of the next fiscal year? And again, 3% is a very conservative. This time last year, I was projecting this same 3%, but then by the time I got to February, March, the data that I was working with, I had to project about 5%. And then by the time I got to March and April, I was projecting 7%. So right now, we're looking at a conservative projection of about 3% growth of all of that data that you're looking at. So the bottom line, the recommended grade, 11, there's where I take a look at that 3%. I don't want to give you a recommendation that keeps you where you are. You're already, for this particular position, 3.9% below. And then if we look at where that would be next July 1st, then that moves to 43,472. So that's going to add another 3%. So my recommendation and what I look at here is I look at the average. In all of these classifications, I take it that first global view of what is the geographic average salary for each of your positions. And then I then take a look at the median, because the median does provide that opportunity to soften the high and the low. It sometimes gives me a better view of what the data actually looks like. It softens that effect that the high salaries or the low salaries have. So when I look at all of this data, and all of this is without regard to individual employees. I spend about 85% of my time focused on just the positions, because I have to be very comfortable in the recommendations that I make about where is that competitive market position that each of your positions needs to be in, or in my recommendations needs to be in. So in this one, you can see that my recommendation is that this position moves to grade 11, which puts that minimum or beginning salary at $43,394, which is about where that average projected salary would be on July 1st. Now, looking at the column that says actual, you can again see that the actual average salary for firefighter 2s was $44,719. And in the far right corner, you can see that shows me that the average market salary of $47,291 is 5.8% greater than your average salary, and the median is 3.2% greater.
Can I ask a question?
Oh, yes, sir.
Range, explain the range.
Yes. In the range just provides what's the minimum salary for somebody coming into any particular position. The maximum salary, it is where each individual local government decides that their maximum salary should be. Now, a lot of that is driven by market data. So you can see the ranges of all of those other local governments for this particular position. And you currently have a range of about 50%, which means that your maximum salary is 50% greater than the minimum. Now, again, the midpoint is actually the starting point of creating a salary grade range. And then once you know what the market value is, or that average salary is, then you start creating your range. But more specifically, the range, the minimum for this range is where you need to be competitive on that entry-level salary, because that's that salary that you're advertising. You're competing directly with each of these positions at that minimum salary. So each time you advertise for a police officer or firefighter or public service employee, it's that advertised minimum salary or range that candidates are looking at. But if you look under the column that's titled range, you can see that Asheville's range for this particular position is only 32%. But that's because Asheville has an aggressive movement where an employee in this classification isn't expected to be there very long. They then would move to the next higher classification. Most of these other local governments that you'll see have ranges that are in the 50%. And again, that's the maximum is 50% greater than the minimum. The midpoint is really the focal point of a salary grade range, because again, that's where you would expect somebody's salary to be who's been with you or in their position 8 to 10 years. I said a lot. I don't know that I said the right thing to answer your question.
No, that explains, I just was trying to understand the column range.
Okay.
What those figures meant, and I understand.
But, and if you look at those ranges below the blue line, you can see that they're all about 50%.
Right.
For this particular one for you, you're 49.94%, and you can see what the average and the median is. And that bottom line actually is my recommendation, and we'll take a look at that in just a couple of minutes, to actually move to a 50% range. And I won't spend as much time on this one, but again, this is an example of Public Service Tech 1. And here's another part of the subjective part of doing these kinds of studies, and I'm sure all of you know, the larger the local government, the more specialized employees are. The smaller the local government, the more hats everybody wears. So I have to take a look at that total scope, and that's where that position description questionnaire information comes into play, that 12-page questionnaire that each of your employees completed. It was that 12 pages of them telling me everything that they do that helps me when I'm looking at this kind of data. So, and again, I won't spend as much time on this one and the next one as I did the first one, but here you can see that the information below the blue line, for this particular classification, your entry-level salary, your minimum salary is pretty close, less than 1% off the average. Salary, looking over in that far left bottom, about 5.5% below where the market average is. Your average employee for this particular classification's average salary is $37,223. Average salary for this particular market is $39,367. So again, I take a look at that 3%, where I think that data is going to look or be by July 1st. So I'm making a recommendation that this position move up one pay grade. Police officer is an example of one of your classifications that is actually above the market. So below the blue line, you can see that for police officer, and this is for that particular classification of police officer. This is not sergeant, that's not chief, that's each of your positions in each of your departments has one of these sheets. So for this particular classification, your minimum entry-level salary is $44,756. The average minimum for this identified market is $41,497. The median is almost exactly the same as the average, but your average salary for a police officer is about 5% greater than where the average market is. Or said differently, the average market salary is 5% below.
So if somebody becomes a brand-new police officer, is this the level we're talking about?
This would be that brand-new police officer.
Okay. And the same with the firefighter too? That's a brand-new firefighter?
Yes, I think, and chiefs, help me out. All of your firefighters are at the 2 level?
No.
No.
Not all. Just 2 per shift.
No, what it means is you don't have anybody at firefighter 1, they're all firefighter 2
yes,
and
they're,
above.
sorry, I misunderstood.
That's
Okay, I'm
entry
sorry.
level.
My whole staff was
No.
level 2. I was like,
Oh.
okay.
No.
Gotcha.
But that's where they start.
Yeah, that's where they start. It's level 2.
So can you explain, in this case, right now, we are above average, 5% above average or more than that, 7%? Yet you're still recommending an increase.
Yes.
Can you explain that?
Yes. A lot of that comes from internal equity. And I can tell you, I'm conservatively projecting 3%. Probably by the time we get to July 1st, that starting salary is going to be at or near or probably above $45,000. So this is one of those subjective pulse of the market. I'm currently working with Brevard. I'm currently working with McDowell County. I work each year with Morganton. I'm working again this year with Weaverville. So just in that group right there, there's 4 or 5 that I know where they're going to go. So looking at this data, why would I want to go to that next grade? My answer is that's probably where everybody's going to be by July 1st. So this is the last one of these that we'll take a look at, but we only looked at 3, but this just gives you a look at how I collect data, what that data looks like when I put it in spreadsheets and start using all the formulas and everything that we do. But each one of your positions in each one of your departments has one of these comparisons. And it was from all of this, discussions with department directors, with Josh, looking at, working through all of this information, we end up with the recommendations that we did.
And one more question that
Yes,
is
sir.
probably the appropriate time to ask. You may be getting into this, so I apologize if I'm jumping ahead. But so if we're looking at a police officer, this level position, or a firefighter too, and kind of comparing that across different municipalities, that position probably doesn't look all that much different whether you're working in Asheville or Woodfin or Black
Correct.
Mountain. Something like a department head or town manager or something like that could their responsibilities might vary differently, or what their the size of the budget there.
Absolutely.
Or something like that. So how do you account for some place like Asheville, skewing the results significantly, just because they have a much larger,
Yeah.
responsibility?
I do Asheville the same way I do Woodfin. I first began with this global view of the geographic market area. What is the geographic average salary for a police officer? And that's going to include Asheville. That's going to include Woodfin. That's going to include all of the ones up there. Median is up there to help me better understand how the highs and the lows affect it. So I use median a lot to, as I said earlier, soften the blow of the Asheville's and the Woodfins. But I begin with that global view of what is the geographic average salary of each of the positions. If I find that, in this case, Asheville, and I'm just making this up, if I found a particular classification, a department director kind of position, that Asheville was just significantly higher than the market, I wouldn't even use Asheville's data. It would have, that one entry alone would have an overwhelming effect on the data. So there's lots of studies I do where I would collect data from an Asheville or a Raleigh or a Wilmington, and then actually end up not using that data just because it had an overwhelming effect of the overall information. But I have to be careful with that, because if I do that to Asheville, and not picking on Woodfin, of course, but what would I do with McDowell County, Lake Lure? If I did that to Asheville, what would I need to do with Lake Lure? So I have to put them all in there to begin with, and then just see if one just absolutely is significantly higher or lower. But that median gives me a better look at what that data really looks like. And in this case, you can see that that median is within just a relatively small, and most of them were like that. You can see on this one, the average and the median are just a couple of $100 apart. And then, well, there's about $2,000 difference in that one. But I am mindful of those wide spreads from highs to lows. But again, if I'm viewing Asheville's data from the standpoint of it's too high, we just can't compete with them, then I'm going to have to take a look at Lake Lure and say, well, they're just too low, and we can't compete with them, because we're never going to lose anybody to Lake Lure, because they don't they're not even up to where we are. But with all of that aside, I have to know what's the geographic average salary for each of the positions, whether that's a police officer or a police chief. And obviously, the police chief, well, I don't know. I won't start picking on the individual classifications, but a department director in Asheville is going to make more than a department director in Black Mountain.
And they'll have more employees and they'll have more.
Yeah. But I would say that your department directors do more work than.
How do you factor in vacancies within departments? Let's just say that, Asheville was full.
Yeah.
Okay, but then Weaverville has got 4 vacancies in the firefighting. How does that, you do bring that into your consideration, don't you?
Well, I collect the average salary of all of those employees who are currently working in each of those positions. So Asheville's fire department could be fully staffed. So I'm going to be collecting data and averaging that and getting the median salary data for a fully staffed fire department. And then the next one may be only 50% staffed. I don't take into consideration the fact that they're only 50% staffed. I take into consideration what's the average salary of those that are working. And what's the average salary of those who are working over here. So to answer your question, I don't give, in my calculations, I don't look at vacancies, because if I looked at the vacancies, I would be looking at minimum salaries in the most part. If each of those positions over here were filled, they probably would be filled with brand-new employees whose salaries would be at the minimum, which would be an unfair relationship or an unfair comparison.
Yeah, but the vacancy has got to reflect something of the marketplace, the fact that.
Well, it does.
They're not filled.
It does.
But what if you find the situation to where you find a town who's full, and you got one that's got vacancies, but that the average salary of this over here in the unfilled was greater than that of there that is filled?
Yeah, I don't know how to answer that. That's, that gets into workplace issues. That gets into a lot of issues outside of a paying class study.
But you have found something like that?
Oh, yes. Absolutely. I have.
All right, well, and
Okay.
Your recommendation then?
Well, first take a look at your pay plan. So on the left side is your current pay plan. And your pay plan is very similar to ones I see a lot as I go across the state. They start off with an even 50% range, an even 5% differential. But over the years, depending on COLAs, depending on software, a 5% differential from one grade to the next sometimes becomes 4.99 or 5.01. And then the next year, you may implement a 2% COLA adjustment, and the pay plan gets adjusted 2%, but the 5.01 now becomes 5.02, the 4.99 now becomes 4.98. So your current pay plan is a good example of, over the years, just implementing COLAs and whatever adjustments that you've put in. The exact differentials from one grade to the next and the exact range measurement from minimum to maximum starts becoming uneven. My recommended pay plan over on the right side, for the most part, is taking your current pay plan and just smoothing it out. It's returning your ranges to an exact 50%. Again, meaning the maximum salary is going to be an exact 50% greater than the minimum. And then each of your pay grades is going to be, each of your successive higher pay grades is going to be exactly 5% greater than the one below it, whether you measure that at the minimum, the midpoint, or the maximum. So what you see on the right side is just taking your current pay plan. I did adjust the minimum for grade 6. Your current minimum for grade 6 is $33,350. I just rounded that up to $34,000. But from there, the salary ranges are an exact 50%. The differential from one grade to the next becomes an exact 5%. Your current pay plan, you can see down at the bottom, you have grades 11A, 12A, 13A, and so forth. Those were grades set up sometime in the past for the fire department. My recommendation is that you do away with those because I don't see a significant difference in those ranges and amounts. So if you looked at grade 11A, a minimum of 44,756, and if you looked up to grade 12, you can see that grade 12 is 44,865. There is not a significant difference in grade 12 and grade 11A. And you can look at all of those and see. And sometimes there are legitimate reasons to have separate pay plans for fire, for police, and some others. But in your case, I think all of your classifications can be administered effectively within just the one pay grade range or sequence instead of having it that second group.
So if we get rid of the A's, no positions going backwards.
No. And that's one of the reasons that I rounded the minimum for grade 6 from 33,350 up to 34,000 to make sure that that gave me enough buffer to make sure that none of the grades actually dropped below where they should have been.
So is it inevitable over time, like in 15 years, we're going to be all off again with the 5%? Does that just happen because?
The next time you do a COLA, instead of letting a machine do it, maybe have somebody actually pick up a calculator and just check the computer calculation.
So not across the board.
Well, the adjustment that you're making could be COLA, could be any, but typically when somebody does an across-the-board adjustment, a COLA, just making this up 2%, then somebody in payroll or HR will go into the system and just increase all the numbers 2%. But you can see what happens.
Because somebody in the 7th grade may be at the minimum, somebody in the 8th grade, at the 8th grade 8 may be up here at the maximum.
Could be. But machines just round differently sometimes. And if it's not corrected, then that difference is going to grow to be much larger.
Please clarify me on, you want the human resource officer, whoever it is, to come in. So if we've got, because as you go down all these pay grades, you've got somebody at the minimum, somebody at the maximum, somebody, and they're all over. So how are we pulling those together so they don't spread out? Because if somebody was at the minimum here at 7 and someone at grade 8 at a maximum, and you did that year after year, well, that's going to stretch further and further apart. How
Yeah, and that's why in salary administration, there has to be that human element that you just can't let a personnel payroll system calculate all of those things. But you have to have that HR person or manager or somebody who actually is administering your pay and class plan. And having somebody at the minimum of one grade and the max of another grade, they are not affected with those 2% or across-the-board adjustments, because they're going to get, unless there's merit or some other adjustment involved, they're going to get that same 2% in our example, that same 2% that the pay grade range is going to get. So the pay grade range may move, you may do the 2%, but the system may have only advanced at 1.99%, or may have advanced at 2.01%. Well, your system is going to move those employees that same amount. You're going to implement that adjustment to your pay plan ranges. Employees.
I'm just glad that I'm not in HR to have to figure that out.
Buy the donuts the day we use it and do that, John.
I'll let you know when.
Yeah.
2 dozen.
You can just take a look at me and see what 40 years in HR does to you.
Can I ask a question?
Oh, yes, sir.
So you've got these minimum, midpoints, and maximum within each grade.
Yes.
And are those functions of years that people automatically move up? I mean, I don't understand what the system is.
There are different ways to administer individual salaries. Some of those recommendations that we talked about focus on how long an employee has been in their current position or how long they've worked for Black Mountain. But in your case, you have such a relatively young workforce that focusing on how long somebody has worked for you or how long they've been in their current position is not going to move individual employees. Go back and take a look at that first and second charts that we looked at. So one of the recommendations that we're going to talk about tonight is not focusing on how long they've been in their position or how long they've worked for the town. It's taking them where they are now, which is a product of how long they've been in their position and how long they've been here. Even though you had a lot of those high bars over on that left side. My recommendation that we'll talk about is to move each of the, my recommendations are to adopt the new pay plan that we just looked at. And then assign each position to the pay grade that's supported by the market data or my subjective view of that market data. And then the third bullet on this one is to then establish employee salaries or set employee salaries at the same comp ratio or that same relative position to the midpoint in the new grade that they have in the current grade. And what that's doing in my example, if I'm currently in grade 6 and my salary is currently 20% above the minimum of grade 6, but then my position actually because of the study gets moved to grade 7, then my salary is going to be set down at 20% above the minimum of grade 7, the same position that I have in grade 6. Now going back to the charts, what that does is it moves your positions to each of those market-supported grades, but then once I move employees and put them down at the same spot, that same relative position, in the new grade that they have in the old grade, and then I then ran another chart that looked, it would look just like that second chart that we looked at. What it does is maintains everybody's relative position within their grade range, but it maintains their relative position to each other. And because you have a relatively young workforce, I don't know the number of employees who've been with you more than 20 years, but from that one graph you saw, there weren't a lot over there. They were all, most of them over here on that far left side. So there's not a large separation. And if you remember in one of my earlier remarks, you do have some salary compression. It's mostly based on the relatively large number of new employees, but you do have salary compression that, if not addressed in the future, and the future could be the next fiscal year or year after, but sometime in the next couple of years, then you need to start taking a look at how long employees have been in their position and then recalculate or reestablish where their salary should be. Because then you then start creating that separation between employees who've been here a while and those brand new employees. This is going to, my recommendations tonight are helping in a couple of ways. Each of your positions then would be in that very market competitive position. Each of your employees would then be in the same relative position to each other that they are now. And in my opinion, that's okay going into this next fiscal year. But as I said, probably year after is where you need to start taking that more detailed look at your workforce and begin to put in some of those time in position or years of service models, and I'll be glad to share those with Josh, but implementing those kinds of options then begins to create that separation. Because if after this next fiscal year, if you don't start addressing that, then you're going to be bringing in new employees who are coming to work at the same or nearly the same salary as people who've been with you a while.
Do we always start people at the minimum?
No, we don't always do that. You know, it depends really on, qualifications, experience,
Okay.
years of service, maybe with another jurisdiction, but no, we don't always start them off at minimum.
But you can see from the graph, that's where a lot of them are.
Yeah, right.
So that's, and I think I've already talked about this, what does that comp ratio actually look like and what does it accomplish? It accomplishes that, keeping everybody in their same relative position and so forth. So of course, I saved this slide for last. So if you implemented just those couple of things that I talked about, adopt the new pay plan, then assign each of your positions to the pay grade that's commensurate with the supporting market data, and then setting employee salaries at that same comp ratio, that same relative position that they have in their current grade. The implementation of that, and I've got my markings in the wrong place. That would be an increase of $284,748 in salary. And to that would be about 25% that represents FICA, retirement, 401k, those payroll associated costs of $72,000. So the total cost to implement would be a little over $360,000.
So those numbers are different than the ones we got in the packet?
Yes.
We had to make some adjustments to a
Okay.
couple people.
So those are the.
These are the correct
Okay.
numbers, yes, ma'am.
That's 360 is on an annual basis.
That's correct.
Which would be a structural change. not just a one-time change.
Oh, it's every year. It's just like your COLA you do every year.
That's
exactly
saying,
right.
just so they
That's
will
exactly
understand
correct.
that that's what it would be.
This is not a one-time fee.
Right.
Not a one-time expense. It's a recurring expense, in addition to COLAs and merits that you may give in the future.
Right.
So my next
Company is
slide's,
no better than the people you got working for you.
That's right.
So
It's an investment.
that's what we need to do, is to keep the people that we've got working for us. I'm still a little bit apprehensive about how to go ahead and make these adjustments, whether it's with the CR, the compa ratio, or, of course, it's up to the board to decide. But my feeling is that, yes, we need to do something. Is the urgency today? Until we can figure, I'm just not comfortable about how that you go about adjusting and getting this ranges on the paper for our 127 employees. That's what's got me concerned.
So there's,
Is how you do it, because there's a lot of subjective in there, which there probably always will be.
oh, always are.
So,
Always
how that we do it, if y'all have a plan, let me hear it.
so I see two parts to this. And just to give everybody that maybe wasn't around last year, the council at that time spent pretty much a whole day in a retreat setting with facilitators, just talking about the needs of the town, articulating needs of the town, and kind of establishing priorities, which I'm telling you, it's tough. We had pages and pages around the room, because when you start listing the needs of the town, there are many. And then they worked with us to help us, there were 4 of us were there at the time, worked with us to identify, I think it was the top 19. And then we got down to the top 5. And the number one, we all agreed, the number one issue facing the town was staffing and payroll and getting it right going forward. And I know I came away from that really committed to this, and it's taken a long time, and I understand why. It's a lot of work, and I understand it took a while to get it, but I personally am really committed to doing right by our employees, and it became even more evident in recent economic times because of the recruitment and retention issues that every business and organization in the world or in the country's having. But it's also a moral issue, in my opinion, that we just can't expect, that we need to treat our employees fairly, that they need to be earning a fair wage. And so, I just wanted to say that out loud, that this whole conversation really started, it was council-driven. The council brought this up last spring and really talked about it a lot. It was I never had a staff member come to me and say, you gotta help. Nobody's ever come and complained to me. So it was all council-driven. Now, the numbers are big. There's no way around that. It's gonna be a challenge, and as the mayor just referred to it, figuring out how to implement this is a challenge. We're all gonna have to put our heads together and figure it out. But I just wanted to say out loud that I am really committed to implementing this. I think it's the fair thing to do. I think some positions, some departments maybe need bigger adjustments, that it's just, we need to have things lined up so our employees are treated fairly, that they know we value them, that we know they do good work, and they should be compensated accordingly. And if we ever have any hope of recruiting these various positions going forward, really quality people, I think we just have to go forward with this. So whatever we have to do to figure this out, I'm willing to work on that too with all of you. But I just wanted to say out loud that I feel really strongly on this topic.
Do we have any more questions for David?
Take questions from the audience.
No.
One thing that was helpful for me, thank you, Pam, I thought that was well said, and I completely agree with you. This is not just a moral obligation to our current employees and, ensuring that morale is good for our current employees, but also, setting us up for success as we have inevitable vacancies and have to fill those vacancies. One thing that was helpful for me that Josh sent over earlier today was a breakdown, kind of an overview look at by department, the breakdown of where these funds were going. And I thought it was interesting that some of the biggest ones, fire department had the biggest, would see the biggest increase. Public service after that, police after that, and it goes on and on. And some of that, I'm sure, is just the number of employees within these different departments. But I think it's important to see that these are the people who are picking up our trash, who are helping with keep us safe, and it's important to ensure that we're treating these people properly and that we're hiring the best, most qualified candidates. But how do we pay for it?
Yeah, I would have to agree that I think it's really important that it's difficult to maintain qualified personnel if you're not paying them a fair price or fair wage. And I would hate to see what we have here diminished just because we can't give them a fair wage. So likewise, I think we need to push this, but we're gonna have to put our heads together, like Pam said, and we're gonna have to come up with a solution. But we are definitely gonna get this done.
So Josh, you're proposing that we adopt it tonight?
That's correct.
As presented, yeah.
That's correct.
Mm-hmm. And so what would that look like?
So right now, if you adopted it tonight, you would be looking at about $150,000 roughly between now and the end of June 30. And of course, come July 1, you're going to be looking at the whole 360, plus any kind of COLA that we're going to do, maybe merit if I can get that together to present to council, and then a host of other things that we'll be funding in our next budget. But yes.
So how close are you to the merit thing that if we had spoke about before?
Not very far. I mean, I've gotten into it and gotten some information from some other jurisdictions, but, we do still have, I just want to remind you, we do still have, some excess funds in salary that we, when we went through ARPA and how we chose to spend that ARPA money was paying salaries. So we freed up the money. It was $2.6 million, and there's about $1 million of that still has not been spoken for, that we have not decided how to spend yet. So just wanted to throw that out there for you as well.
But Josh, what is the difference between the merit, is that what you're talking about, and these pay grades and ranges?
So a merit would be,
how does
we haven't had merit in years here. A merit would be me rewarding an employee for good work. Right now, an employee does not get rewarded for.
It wouldn't be just that you get to bump up a grade or you go up?
No. Merit would be based on percentage, and we have that spelled out in our personnel policy on how much that can be. Can't be over a certain percentage. We've done COLA every year since I've been here, which is great to keep those salary grades, each one of them up. But as far as merit goes, that has not been something that has been done. So as far as a raise for good work, this is not happening. Everyone gets a COLA.
This is something you're talking about?
Yes.
That you may propose in next year's
I'm hoping to propose that in the next budget. Yes.
And then that would essentially replace the COLA?
No.
Oh, it'd be in addition, okay, above it, okay.
I would like to thank David for the plan and the work and the explanation. That's helpful to have, rather than looking at it, I got a little cross-eyed looking at some of the charts. And I would echo Pam and Archie and Doug that from the last council, and I would certainly carry forward a commitment to making sure that we treat our employees fairly and try to get to the market. It's a lot cheaper to keep people than to lose them and have to hire new ones. That said, I also think that we have to be mindful about how we pay for it, and there are lots of, I personally am opposed to using the ARPA money to fund this, because what I've been thinking, and I thought that the council, at least last year's council was thinking, was that money was to be used for one-time expenses. But that being said.
ARPA money, I think.
No, I understand how it's been applied. It's been applied to salaries, but to free it up.
It to spend somewhere else, but that ARPA money has to be exhausted by.
Not now, we've already exhausted it.
We've exhausted it with the pay.
Yeah, that
So-
can't constitute that.
But is there, this is a question for Josh, so I don't remember all the details of not the rainy day fund, essentially the rainy day fund.
You're talking about our fund balance.
Fund balance, thank you. We still had room in that this year, correct?
We did. That's correct, because we ended up using about $600,000 of fund balance to balance the budget we're in now, which would end up leaving us still above, I think, our 30%
So
threshold.
if we allocated this 150 or whatever the figure is for this year, we could do that out of that.
We've got the money.
We've got the money, but then, of course, as we build the budget for next year, that's the real issue. But if we adopt this today and we say, well, use the fund balance, well, we paid for it, we've committed ourselves to it. Next year, we got to figure, I mean, it's a lot tougher conversation about how you pay for it going forward.
There's no going backwards.
That's correct. I mean, that's,
If we put it down,
I'm saying
Like
that
in July, we go, oh, never mind.
just to check myself and my
Yeah.
thinking on that.
Right, I know.
David, I'd like to get your ideas on what you, on if we were, the board, was to decide on giving COLAs, but instead of just doing it across the board, to range it from more for the lower grade, less for the higher grade.
Yeah, and
That's possible.
and that actually takes place quite often.
Okay. Yeah, because I think that would be a good thing if we could work in some kind of parameters like that. So
The whole point of the study was to really analyze the ranges and the levels, and just, I can see what you're saying, but I think there's a more systematic approach that we need to take here and really fix this going forward.
Well, no, I'm not talking about not fixing this thing. I'm just simply saying that if we are gonna get into these COLAs, that, instead of just doing it straight across the board, I'd love to see those on the lower grades.
Oh, I see what you mean. I'm
Get a
sorry.
higher percentage than those that get it at the higher grades.
Well, then your pay ranges and your higher grades are gonna suffer.
They
Because
suffer.
you're not giving them COLA.
What- Yeah, they may suffer. They may suffer. But I'm just saying, I think that needs to be part of the equation.
Well, that-
That's a
in looking at it.
conversation worth having.
That's a conversation maybe for another day when we get into.
Oh, yeah, I'm not talking about now. I just wanted to ask David to see.
Yeah, and you have to be careful with that, because the comment is correct. If that takes place over a number of years, then the next time you do take a look at the market to see where positions are, and I can show you any number of examples where those lower levels are more in range with the market because of those kinds of adjustments. But then when you get up into your supervisor, superintendent, department director positions, they then become so far separated from the market that it takes a lot of money to make those adjustments for that group.
David, what is your recommendation for best practices for how often a board should do a salary study? And don't say every year.
Yeah, You want to be on retainer for us?
Well,
Right.
actually, the more often you do them, the less the implementation cost becomes.
Right.
So the longer you wait to do those,
Right.
then
So
those,
you're keeping up with the market in
Yeah.
increments instead of a leap.
So
And
we
just-
tied into with reval of the,
But
It's
still,
down every 4
what
years.
is best practice?
well, best practice is to keep an eye on the market every year.
Okay.
Whether that's somebody like me coming in and doing it, or a staff member checking with each of those local governments just to see what they've done. But just locally, I can tell you that I'm beginning to work with Weaverville each year. Just down the road, I work with Caldwell County and Burke County each year. But with Caldwell and Burke, and those are two good examples of what's known as one-third studies, they're large enough where we just break their workforce into thirds and study that particular one-third this year, the next third. But what that does is guarantee that each classification gets looked at least every third year.
And is that cheaper than doing the whole study?
Yes. Yes.
Josh, this is probably a question for you. If we were to, let's ignore ARPA funds at the moment. If we were to have approached this year's budget with $360,000 more in salaries, what would that have looked like? I know that's a big question.
I don't think I can answer that.
Yeah, okay. Okay.
You would have to have cut services more than likely, or raise taxes, or raise fees, because there's only so much money we get on an annual basis. Now, that does go up from year to year typically, but without knowing what those numbers look like, it's hard for me to say what they would be.
Sure.
what has been the, the unused funds that then go into fund balance at the end of the year?
It depends. It just
Well,
varies.
I mean, I know it varies, I'm just trying to say, is that,
It could be 200,000, it could be 50.
because now when we're within, it seems as though just looking at the past budgets there, that there was a good hefty jump
There
each
was,
year. And
there
that
was.
was, I'm assuming, reflective of the individual departments having vacancies, since
Some
labor
of
is the
Yeah.
biggest expense of the budget.
Some of it, and then revenue's increasing as well, but yeah, that was some of it.
Well, thank you, David.
Thank
I
you.
think is that, everyone had questions for him?
Not for David, no, but I would like to continue the conversation of.
Oh,
what
I'm
our
just
next steps are.
wanting to see if,
Yeah.
David wished to go. We were fine from, I think, unless someone's got questions for him.
I don't.
Well, thank you very much for allowing me to be here tonight. I'll continue to work with Josh until we get to the final point. And as I leave, I'll say that because the University of Tennessee Volunteers will not be playing in tonight's championship game, I hope the Georgia Bulldogs win.
Go Dogs. Well, we can continue, I think that we need a motion, and then we can discuss. Unless the board wishes not to deal with this tonight.
I wish to deal with it tonight.
Yeah, me too. I would move to adopt the plan as presented, and then hopefully we can discuss that, what that looks like. But I'll make the motion.
That's, Councilman makes the motion, so discussion.
I'm in agreement with the leap of faith that we'll figure out going forward how to make this work, and that it's the right thing to do and an investment in our town.
I think what I'm struggling with is what more we would need, more information we could have, you know,
Yep.
before the next budget. And I don't know if there is, you know.
I mean, yeah, the information I think you're looking for is gonna be what these numbers look like when we roll them into the budget. When we've got everything else that we need to talk about, we need to fund.
Right.
And unfortunately, that's not gonna happen for a few more months. But once that does happen, I think that'll make it easier, because you can see numbers and see what it's gonna look like. But until then, it's really gonna be a guess, trying to estimate revenues and expenses between now and then, trying to figure that out. Because I don't even know what y'all wanna do next year, as far as capital stuff, so.
Right. So, but it very well could mean that we have to cut some other spending or raise revenues. I mean, those are our choices if
That's
it's not
correct.
balancing out.
That's correct.
So Josh, would we still be above, I think Mayor said yes, but would we still be above the 30% if we used 150?
I think we would be, I really do.
Any more discussion? Motion's on the table. I'll call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Passes.
Let me make sure I understood what you just voted on.
Uh-oh.
Did you vote for this to be implemented immediately, using $150,000 from fund balance?
Yes.
I'll be
Yes.
bringing you an amendment next month for that.
Yes,
Okay.
exactly.
And working, we said, and the board said, working with HR to try to come up with formulas of how to do this. I'm not saying you implement what he said, he's already given it, but as to how you're gonna try to put in this merit, when you present this merit.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, we have citizen comment. Anybody wishes to speak? Please come forward.
Sean
Name and
Sloan.
address, and make sure you got 3 minutes.
I'll be brief. Sean Sloan, 115 3rd Street, Black Mountain. I just wanted to draw your attention a little bit to the Green Tea Grill lease. The deficit to support the restaurant or the snack bar, I understand and appreciate the importance of the functioning snack bar. But from a business standpoint, you want to charge the business what their revenue will support. And we don't know what their revenue is. So, and you won't know going forward. And so there needs to be something provided in the lease that you know how much money they're generating, and that will inform you about how much you can charge in rent and still have them be successful. That was one thing. And then the other thing.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, citizen comments at this point are supposed to be only related to specific new business.
Yes.
Or unfinished business.
Unfinished. Okay, excuse me. I'm sorry.
So that's one consideration. And the other, which may not be on your radar, is there is the basement of that building that is utilized by, I don't know what, I think it's a women's private club. And there's expenses there, and it's an asset of the town. And I don't know if there's a policy position on that and how the use is permitted, but it is a component of that building that should be considered as well in figuring out the assets of the town and how to best utilize them. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak? Not seeing anybody rushing up. Let's go to new business. Yes. Yeah. Let's take a couple-minute break. Okay, bring the meeting back to order. Well, What do we got here now?
All right, new business 7A would be your designation of your 23-24 voting delegate for the North Carolina League of Municipalities legislative goals. We've included those in the packet for you to take a look at. So we would be looking for a motion from council to appoint that member to the North Carolina League of Municipalities.
So can you tell me, like, what kind of time commitment are we talking? What does this entail?
You know, I don't think it's a lot of time commitment. Really, it's probably only once or twice a year that you even need to do anything. This specific thing being a vote from our municipality, if we designate a member who votes for those legislative goals, that the folks that work for the league, lobbyists, folks of that nature, will work for on our behalf with the legislature.
And Josh, can you give a brief context about what the league does for us?
Sure. So the league, it's a membership-based organization. I won't want to say every one of the municipalities in the state do that, but a lot of municipalities do pay into the league. So they do a lot of lobbying for towns that, a lot of towns don't have the money to do that type of stuff. So they're lobbying for towns on what they think are, the best things that need to be coming to towns. Another reason that you need a voting member to vote on those goals. They also do a lot of trainings. We actually have our insurance. This is I'm losing the name of it. Our liability insurance through the League of Municipalities. They also have a conference they do every year, which is usually in the middle of the year. It's usually elected officials that go to those conferences. So that's kind of what they do. Just a lot of different things, but all in betterment of municipalities and towns.
Who was the last delegate that we had?
I don't recall that we had one in my years as a clerk here.
Does it have to be a council member? Can it be a?
It has to be an
Yes.
elected official.
Yes.
It has to be an elected official.
Well, did the public get these goals? Do they have access to them?
That they are in the
packet.
Yeah, I'd really encourage people to read them because there are a lot of things that people can contact me or us about, affordable housing and multimodal transportation, public transportation, local economic government. I mean, it's really interesting, and the likelihood that Black Mountain's going to impact the North Carolina General Assembly to get this stuff done is limited, but by pooling our resources with League of Municipalities, I think we have a much louder voice. So I'm very supportive of the goals they've prepared.
They also work for the municipalities if the legislature introduces some bill that would negatively impact municipalities. So they go back for us to say this will not work, this impacts revenue, et cetera.
They're paying attention to all of that.
They are.
Yeah, great.
I would move to nominate Councilmember King. She rolled her eyes. I don't know if she wants it. You can decline, but I would move to nominate you
Well, the
to.
time thing was my main concern, like if it was another monthly meeting, it might not
I don't think
be
it's that extensive.
feasible, but do you have to go to Raleigh to do these? It's virtual? Well, I'm in.
You can put your wine and.
I hear that as a motion. Is all in favor, Pam?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, Pam's got it.
Woohoo! Thank you, Pam.
So what do we got next?
There it is.
President J.J. Boyd gets to come up.
So Mr. Boyd is present with us tonight. He has worked for Skyrunner, and this is something we've been talking about for a little while. It was on the this was on the agenda last month, right?
Yeah.
And so now Mr. Boyd is here to talk a little bit more about what Skyrunner does, and take it away.
Thank you, Josh.
Yes, sir.
Good evening, council. Thank you so much for having me, and Mayor, thank you for allowing me to speak this evening. Maybe bring a little bit of context, a little bit of color about maybe what was presented last time and how we even got into this conversation to start with. So I'd like to take a moment and kind of explain to the council and for you guys precisely who we are and what we do. So I'm not going to read the slides verbatim, but our roots go back to 1997. doing fixed wireless, so it kind of was a business that was born out of need, like of needing broadband. We recognized that long ago, and I've spent my entire career in this space, building different companies, and in this case, trying to help people in the community gain access to meaningful broadband. And so Skyrunner is a team. In that slide it says 35 employees. We float between 35 and about 40, just depending on seasonally. And we provide fixed wireless internet to homes and businesses that may not have that as an option, or want an alternate option to the large carriers.
Let me just interrupt that.
Sure.
Can you please define that fixed wireless?
So it's fixed broadband, meaning that it's to a structure. It's not like to a mobile device. So like you can't just get it on your computer without having an installation at your home or business.
So the recipient has to participate by having a piece of your equipment?
Yes.
In order to get it? Okay.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So kind of fundamentally, in our minds, we play an important role in closing the digital divide. And I don't know if all the council folk kind of understand. I think fundamentally through COVID, it was really highlighted how important having broadband access is. And we've kind of been pursuing that, over the last some decades, helping people gain access to this meaningful broadband, especially in places where they don't have it. We have a lot of rural areas in the mountains where the cable companies and the DSL companies and the wireline providers just simply forgot about, or it was not economical for them to build it. And then we came in with a fixed wireless solution, and we're able to, offer them broadband. And it's kind of been a very organic, we get a call and we go help someone, and we get another call and we go help someone else. The whole journey for me started because I needed internet, and then I got it and figured it out for myself, and then my neighbor, and then, 20 years later, I'm still doing it. So I do want to take a moment and speak to the importance of fixed broadband. In our minds at Skyrunner, and many people that are in this space that I work in, we see it as a means to closing the homework gap or closing the digital divide for those that haven't been, kind of recognized on these broadband maps. And in Buncombe County, we serve right at 2,000 homes and businesses total in Buncombe County, not just Black Mountain. Black Mountain's, much less than that. The digital divide kind of is an idea or concept that encompasses the unequal distribution of technology access to those that live in generally more rural or remote areas. Like if you're in an urban setting, like if you live in like Black Mountain proper, you can just call Spectrum, but imagine living 10 minutes out of town and that's not an option. That's kind of where we come in and are an option for those folks that might live on the face of a mountain and a line extension program doesn't exist to get that line, the extra 2,000 feet to their home. With our technology, we can kind of start at the tops of the mountains and work down. I've provided a couple photographs here to kind of illustrate our work environment generally, where we spend a lot of time out in very beautiful, picturesque vistas on top of tall spires, and I love it. It's a gift to be able to go put up antennas and be able to help people, especially when you're bringing it to them for the first time, where they've not had broadband in the home. It's so rewarding to get to have that experience, like where you've changed their life essentially. It's like you brought them electricity for the first time, or it's a really, it's the thing that gets my shoes or boots on the ground every morning, is hoping that I get to experience that day. Not so much anymore that I'm not doing all the installs myself, but and then the homework gap, you know, you guys have probably heard many of these terms before, but it kind of references if you don't have broadband or fixed broadband in the home, it's very difficult to perform schoolwork. And that was really highlighted and illustrated through, you know, the era that we just went through. And so a little bit about how we do it. We put equipment like you see here. This equipment in the top right-hand image is actually on top of a home. We work with a lot of people that own just amazing pieces of real estate that we have relationships with, and they allow us to host equipment such as this to provide broadband to others. So in this case, anybody that's in that valley there that can see this location could gain access to broadband. And then in the bottom right-hand corner, we've started building a lot of fiber. We work with Haywood County to provide fiber broadband to many folks in Haywood County. So I wanted to talk about fiber for just a moment because we're a hybrid fiber wireless fixed broadband provider, meaning like we move in and out of whichever technology makes the most sense for that region. And that's important for this conversation because the location here in the town of Black Mountain, specifically the police/fire department, there's a tower behind it, and beyond that, it's kind of a nexus point for the fiber that goes through this area. There's kind of regional fiber provider that's inside that building that houses their equipment in there, and we take advantage of that access there to kind of gain access to that fiber there that we have kind of like agreements in place to where we can access that fiber. They can build laterals off of it and they serve other folks off of it, but we interconnect with them at that point and are allowed, you know, and kind of shoot that up to, in this case, it's Allen Mountain. So we have like equipment that transports internet to Allen Mountain. And then we distribute it to homes that may be able to see that from Allen Mountain. But that's just a little bit, like, without getting too technical, in our minds, we focus on creating a friendly work environment, and all of our people are local, like they live in Buncombe, Madison, Haywood. I was trying to think, Rutherford County, we've got a person that works over there, and they're kind of remote workers, and then we also employ a number of like teleworkers that kind of answer the phones and do that, but they're all local people. And something that's very important to us is we participate in what's called the ACP, or the Affordable Connectivity Program. It's a program that came out through COVID that allowed kind of underprivileged homes or low-income homes to gain access to broadband at no cost. We offer, so without getting too deep into it, like no cost means that the plan was $30 or less. So we made sure that we offered a plan that would be no direct cost to the end user that would qualify to be broadband by the definition of the FCC. To get them into a situation where they could have access. And I looked at this infrastructure, and there's 6 homes that have no direct cost internet off of it. And to be clear, we're not talking about, like 1,000 homes we serve off this. We're very like guerrilla-like, where we go out and build little bitty pods and help, like in this case, I don't have an exact number, but it's somewhere around like 60 homes total that gain access to the internet through this infrastructure. Yeah, through that location, like directly associated with that tower that we're talking about here.
There's 60 on there. And how much do you charge them outside
It varies.
the ACP?
It varies. Our plans are on our website.
But I mean, roughly. Is it
Anywhere from
$20, $100?
30 and to around 115, depending on
Okay,
the
so a
speed
good
of the
average,
plane.
you would say it'd be $60 if you averaged it all out. Somewhere close to that.
I mean, those are your words, but that's not my my
Okay, well,
average.
I'm just trying to come up with.
Okay, it's closer to 45 on average for the take rate.
45, okay, that's fine then.
39 is probably our most, plan that people take the most. So it's important in our minds to take care of the customer. We're fanatical about making sure that we can go into the home and take care of them. We do a lot of work with Asheville Housing Authority. We do every unit in Asheville Housing Authority at no direct cost to the end user. We work with the Dogwood Trust to enable that project. So we really care about these, the ability to go in and provide low cost or no cost options, especially to households with children and or school age children in them. But overall, we're fundamentally customer service based. I mean, our Google reviews kind of speak for themselves. Like we really appreciate people leaving those and it's like anything, you can sort it upside down and see bad things, but overall it's good. But overall, we're dedicated to engaging with the community and attempting to.
And you've obviously read the agreement. Are there any questions you've got about it? Is there any?
Which agreement?
This one that we want to, that you're coming applying for, the tower lease agreement.
Well, there was two agreements that I saw. There was one that we proposed, so it wasn't clear to me precisely which one that you, was it the tower licensing agreement that we provided? Yeah.
I don't know where it originated. I took what was the lease and modified it into a license agreement. Didn't change a lot of the terms. It came to me with that, $200 a month. I left that in there. That's where the council wanted to know where that number came from, and if it was a practical number.
Yeah, so that agreement has been utilized with, say, town of Waynesville, and we're quite aware of the intricacies of license, like making sure that it's, a licensing agreement style approach, and I'm pretty sure that language was representative of those limitations of it not being a lease. So, just to kind of finish, I got maybe two more slides, if I may, Mayor. So the access to the fire station, and this gets to the point, and our access to the fire department tower is essential for us to continue providing meaningful fixed broadband for the locations that we serve in Black Mountain. Without this access, we're unable to close the digital divide and continue our work with those people. So I just wanted you guys to kind of be aware with that. And our ask here is to, in short, accept the proposed licensing agreement as it exists so that we may continue that work.
Anybody have any questions of the gentleman? I think $200 is a deal. So, anybody got any questions? Anybody like to make a motion to accept it? To accept the license agreement?
I want to point out and make sure I'm understanding, it is $200 monthly, and then at the 1 year mark, a 5% increase.
That's correct.
For an entire year?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's 200 per month.
Per month?
Yeah.
And then at the 1 year, it would go up 5%?
And
Yes.
and kind of a little bit more color. There's historically it was kind of an exchange for services. Those services have been extended. There was a kiosk at some point. This kind of predates my tenure as Sky Runner, so I've got bits and pieces, and I can piece together from searching from emails that I have access to. And Josh, you may have similar kind of relationship with that. It's like, I think it predates both of our tenures and our roles. But we're open to suggestion, but it's very important for the people that depend on it for internet, and without it, they would, the lights would go out, so to speak.
Currently, there's no monthly fee, is that right?
That's correct.
I move approval of the agreement as presented.
Okay, any more discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, council.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Waiting around the whole meeting.
Yeah.
4 minutes, and you'll be here the whole time.
All right, Josh?
All right. Next item would be, let's see, 7C, which is clarification regarding council members as advisory board members. We talked a little bit about this in our agenda meeting last Thursday. Essentially, our policies or ordinances are silent on this matter as far as council members as serving as advisory board members that this council creates. And I know Ron had some comments at the last meeting, and we had some discussion, and I think we said, let's stop talking and wait till Monday. So that's where we are today.
Maybe you should reiterate what
Yeah.
you said on Thursday.
And from my point of view, is you have these advisory boards and commissions to advise you. And if you sit on those same commissions, are you getting what you really want from the committees? And I've talked to the mayor about this a little bit more, but I've had some experience with close connections between council members, aldermen at that time, and separate boards. And whether it happened or not, you started to have the appearance that a council member had more influence with that particular commission. So when that commission's advice came up to the board, you were wondering if the council member was sort of taking undue advantage of their position on that, as a liaison of that commission. They'd get that commission to literally bring back to them their point of view, not necessarily the free-wheeling point of view of a separate advisory board. Whether that was true or not, I don't know. I just know amongst the aldermen, there was that suspicion of their fellow aldermen.
So we're talking about whether or not they have a voting role. Because any of us can go to any of these
You can attend
meetings
any
we want,
meeting, right.
anytime we want, but it's just a question of whether one of us could have a voting role on one of them, correct?
That's correct.
And I'm hearing a third option too of being a liaison, so kind of a non-voting member.
Well,
So
I
there's
had a
voting-
question about that too.
Okay. Yeah,
But
good.
did you say
I was
everything?
just gonna. Yeah.
Okay. So my question is, if all of us, any of us can go to any board or commission we want at any time, and we've never appointed, we haven't felt the need to have appointed or designated liaisons, what is the role of the liaison? That's what I'm getting at. Like why do we need a liaison?
I think technically, in my mind, liaison would ferry back the information from that board to this board. Vice versa, would be my thought on that.
Yeah.
Sounds like building a road where you've already got a road.
Yeah.
I don't know that we
That's-
have issues with getting that information, but.
I don't know, I've gone to different commissions and boards as I saw an interest, a particular topic was going to be discussed. I found it very interesting because then when it came to us, I had a real thorough understanding of what their conversation had been, let's say the planning board, I don't know. But I didn't see myself as any kind of liaison. So I don't know, I'm just not sure why we need to create that designation. Love to hear what you all think.
I think the initial question, though, is whether or not you're going to create a policy set in stone, whether or not a council member could be a member of any of the advisory boards.
Can be a voting member, right?
An active member, correct.
You know, I think one of the nice things about our advisory boards is that it gives opportunity for citizens to participate in the conversation without being elected. And you know, one concern I have about council members sitting on those boards is taking up a seat that someone else might wish to serve. And I know that sometimes in some of the boards we have trouble filling them, and that's, you know, so to have an extra vote would probably be good for some of them. But I do fear that it would kind of defeat the purpose of some of these advisory boards.
Do we need a motion?
I think
Or is it just
what
a
staff's
policy?
looking for direction on how you want to deal with this moving forward. Do we want a policy in place that says that?
I think while we're visiting this, what we recommend in terms of a policy should be for all elected officials and town staff. I think that's a reasonable clarification to make and to kind of specify what someone's given role is. We're a big enough town that we can have that separation, I think, so.
Do you feel like town staff have the same confusing if they're voting on a commission?
I hadn't thought about it that much, but typically, usually when you have a commission or a committee, it already has a staff person there, because the town staffs those committees.
Yeah.
There's a body there, not a voting member, but you've got a staff person at those meetings, most of the time, except in the midst of COVID.
It's currently in policy that prohibits staff from
Oh.
sitting on your advisory boards. And
No, it does.
Thank you. Thank you, Angela.
Then I would be in favor of creating a policy that prohibits elected members from being voting members of a advisory board.
Do we want to speak to liaisonship?
Well, let's deal with this one first and see what's there. So that's the form of a motion.
Well, I don't know if that's what I asked. Do we need a motion there?
I mean, I think I can take consensus if y'all want a policy with head nods, then we'll bring back something for y'all to look at the next meeting.
Okay.
I think bring back a policy stating that.
We'll figure it out.
Okay.
And I would say that if, you know, just to, if we are going to formally appoint liaisons, then I think that needs to be defined as to what the role of the liaison is. Currently, I don't think we do that, so I don't know if we need that, but.
I'm just gonna go ahead and attend the meetings, and I will report back.
Yeah, there we go.
Does that mean we have an opening on it?
That is correct. You will have an opening that we will need to advertise for, which we will get right on it.
Thank you.
All right, budget calendar process review.
Okay, we'll go through this quickly. Actually, Alderman, Councilmember King had asked me to include this for everyone. And as I mentioned in my cover sheet, you know, this is, maybe I mentioned it at our last meeting. I would like to do this a little earlier, I think, this year than we do here. This is really just an example of what we did last year. But some of the stuff I would like to try and push up a little bit, like the retreat. I'd like to do that in February if we can get something on the calendar. But the rest of the information really is just for your FYI.
I'd like you to put on the retreat there to discuss Code Red and how we can get everybody in town on it. Because there's a lot of people that were not contacted.
We can do that. Mayor Sobel, right now, when we talk to folks, when they come and pay, we're updating phone numbers. So we're doing that process as well.
Awesome.
Well, we could also utilize our mailing of the water bills.
That's correct. And we've
put
done that
form in
before,
there
too.
for them, you know, so we can do it. But I just think it needs to be something we need to see.
So just to tell you, I asked Josh to pull his calendar together, get all these dates together in one place, because I personally found it enormously helpful to take this much time. It wasn't a lot of time, but, you know, when you're a new council member, or even if you're not, you know, it's, there's a lot. And it was, I felt it was really beneficial to have the different reports that we got in terms of our debt capacity, all these different points we needed to learn about. Gave us a lot of time to talk, to discuss things. It gave the public a lot of time to watch and have their input too. And I would love to have us adopt a similar process for the coming budget cycle. My 2 cents.
I agree.
I think we've
I do.
I think we've all had that conversation with Josh about getting this started early and getting it ready, yeah.
I didn't need anything else I don't need a vote or anything, so thank you.
Okay. All right, no public hearing, so communication from Sneed.
I have nothing to add to the confusion tonight.
I will be brief. So just for those that weren't aware, I think I did tell you in our last meeting about us submitting our first tree for Town Hall for Deck the Trees. Happy to announce that we were recognized as the top community tree here in Town Hall. That being said, Fire Department was the runner-up for raising the most money. And this was really interesting to me. This year, they've raised the most they've ever raised, $63,000 for the heating.
Unbelievable.
Which is really, really great.
What a generous community.
As far as Christmas trees goes, you can place those at the curb for brush pickup. We'll pick up your trees. I think that's been on the website already, but wanted just to mention that here. We will be closed on Monday, January 16th, this coming Monday, for Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Also, the county had let us know today that on Tuesday, February the 7th, from 11:30 a.m. to 1:30 p.m., if you have property value appeals, they will be at Ingalls here in Black Mountain for you to talk to.
It's the 17th, you said?
The 7th, February 7th.
Thank you.
And it'll be on our website for more information. And like Mayor Sobel has said, I do want to thank Jamie and his crew for what they helped us with and what they did for us over Christmas. You know, we did a really good job, I thought, with our water line issues. I think most everybody had water. I'm just glad we weren't in the situation that other folks were in. And then also, I want to thank Steve and the police for apprehending that suspect in a very quick time. So thanks to you both and your departments. And that's it for me.
Josh, do you have an update on the bathrooms, restrooms on Cherry Street?
So right now, we are waiting on quotes. The insurance company has been out and looked at everything, so we are in the process of going through that right now. Getting quotes, getting the insurance money, and my plan is to bring that back after we've got that information and just do a complete renovation of that bathroom. We had planned on doing this in the next budget. I'd planned on proposing that we do it. That bathroom is extremely dated. Does have a rich smell to it, and it's just time for a renovation. So I'm going to bring that information back when we get more.
So what is your time frame?
As soon as we get bids and get the insurance company to sign off, we'll move forward.
Can we not go ahead with the bids?
We're doing the bids now.
Okay, I just wanted to be sure.
Yep, we're doing the bids now.
I need to wait on the insurance
Nope,
company.
we're doing the bids right now.
Before we do the bids.
Doing bids right now.
You know, one thing I would suggest, because I've been by there several times, and that is, and one of the signs is off of one of the doors, but if we could have a sign that has a little map at the top, because someone from Kalamazoo, Michigan doesn't know where Town Square is.
Be happy to work on that tomorrow.
And if you could just have a little map that goes up to US 70, goes stoplight, turn left, put your fire department, put your bathroom.
We'll get on it.
Then they can find it.
And I don't know how we need to get them to stick to the door. Maybe we'll do something different, because people like to tear those off.
Oh, yeah.
Make a lot of them.
Make a lot of them, yeah.
All right, anything from the council they want to share?
I want to reiterate Josh's gratitude to the staff for the past few weeks, which have been eventful. And I know that that meant sacrificing holiday and vacation hours and days, so thank you.
And just to tag on that, I wanted to thank you too. But I also wanted to thank the citizens who made the effort to conserve water, to get us back up to speed. And just to mention, what the mayor was just saying, not sure if everybody knows that you can go to our website and scroll down and it says notify me, and there's a whole bunch of things you can get notified about, different meetings and whatnot, but you get these advisories like we got recently about the water situation, and you can choose, you can get it in text or on your phone or in email. And the more people that do that, it's not just for water, it's any emergency situation. We need to be able to communicate quickly with our citizens. So I encourage citizens to sign up for those notifications.
Anything else? If not, we're adjourned.